So apparently I forgot to hit the record button again, because that's what I do on this very professional stream. Very professional channel. I do this for a living, everybody. And I'm just terrible at it. So, before we talk about Christians telling us why we shouldn't play certain video games, again, because apparently that's a rabbit hole I've gone down. First of all, we have another fan art that was done by Faustina, and it looks really good. It is another Neko Suris fan art. The last one they did was a cat Suris, as opposed to a Neko Suris, because there is a difference for those in the audience who aren't weebs. Before we get into the actual segment, though, just a reminder to everybody who is watching this on YouTube and not on Twitch, I apparently found out that I can use both models at the same time. So for the next couple episodes, I'm going to use both models at the same time, because that just sounds like the kind of chaos that my streams normally devolve into. Completely. So, with that said, let's go ahead and look at why Christians should apparently maybe not play video games, or at least call into question if they should. If you want to drop any more fan art, the best way to do so is dropping it into the Discord as usual. I will show off fan art that goes in there, and with that said, let's go ahead and begin.
Hey guys, today we're going to tackle a question that I've gotten recently, and that is this: is it wrong for Christians to play video games? Stick around, we're going to get right into it.
Man, I can't wait to see how he has to justify this one, because video games is such a broad category that asking the question, should Christians play video games, is like asking the question, should Christians read books? Should Christians watch movies? Should Christians do literally any giant, broad categoried thing? It never ceases to amaze me that this question comes up in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Ted Shuttlesworth Jr. and I'm giving you truth for life. And I want to say thank you for watching again this week. And if you like my channel and you're enjoying these videos, I want to encourage you to subscribe. I have new videos.
Nope. No plugging. Plugging is not allowed. As always, whenever somebody tries to plug their channel or their sponsor, we instead plug our sponsors. And today, we have two. Not only do we have the usual DDLG Playground, use coupon code Suris if you want to get 10% off of anything over there. We also have Artesian Builds as another person who is sponsoring us now. Artesian Builds are a computer building agency. They make custom machines for anybody who needs computers. You can use my coupon code NECOSURIS, and that will get you a discount over there, as well as help the channel and do my stuff. Why do people sponsor me? I actually have no idea why people sponsor me. It makes no sense given the absolute chaos that is my content, but the fact that they're willing to sponsor the random stuff that I do, thank you very much, Artesian Builds, for the opportunity to partner with you as well. With that said, let's get back into the video. Now that we've done our usual, you do your plug, I do mine type of deal.
To play video games. And the first thing I want to show you today is that way back in the early 90s, thanks to games like Mortal Kombat and Night Trap, there was a rating system put in place for video games in North America and around the world. And the reason for that is because the people who were looking at these games, even unbelievers, knew that the content that's in some of these games shouldn't be seen by everybody. It should be common sense and common knowledge to us that if people who are not even serving Jesus Christ can look at a video game and say this is something that certain age groups or certain people should not even experience, then we as believers should understand even more that we need to guard our hearts and guard our minds from...
Oh my god. So this is the thing that I remember hearing from PCA a lot back when I grew up and grew up in the church/school that was PCA. Having this feeling like you have to guard your heart, guard your mind, stay on guard, put on the armor of God. These are things that I heard literally all the time when I was trying to, you know, play Pokemon, read Harry Potter, play Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, what have you. Always would I be told that I needed to guard my heart, very rarely would I hear a substantial reason as to why. Again, video games are a very broad category, just like there are books that certain age groups shouldn't read. If you're 5 years old, I probably wouldn't want you to read, say, 50 Shades of Grey. In fact, actually, if you're 55 years old, I probably still wouldn't want somebody reading that book. But anyway, I digress. Point being, all content generally has age restrictions for various reasons. I would not give a BB gun, for instance, to a child who is 4 years old, because they likely are not going to understand at that age that this is a weapon that can hurt people. If it hits somebody in the temple or it gets somebody in the eye, this is going to do much more damage than, say, a Nerf gun. And we aren't going to call into question at that point, should Christians be playing with toy guns? Because it's a bit of a nonsense question at that point. Your faith isn't going to be challenged by playing with a toy gun. Just like most books that you would read off the shelf, despite them sometimes having adult content in them, will not necessarily be the thing that challenges your faith. And same with video games. Even video games that have messages that run, incongruent with what the church likely wants to say, generally will not do anything to make somebody compromise their faith. Final Fantasy X is a good example of this. I don't want to give any spoilers for what happens with the Church of Sin in that game, but I have several friends who love that game, and they are in fact Christian. Like, at the end of the day, what I've heard more so than anything is that the main thing that drives people from the church where video games are concerned, where books are concerned, where any of the stuff is concerned, is not the content of the material. What I hear usually is that it's people like this who are trying to argue that you should not do these things, that you should restrict what you can watch, should restrict what you can read, should restrict what you can play. Typically, this is what drives people from the church faster than being able to correctly identify when to guard your heart.
Those types of things. And secondly, although it is controversial whether or not video games cause people to take more aggressive actions or more violent actions,
is that controversial? I believe we've actually done a lot of study on that and found that largely it doesn't. Like, generally speaking, no. Like, you don't become a more aggressive person because of the video games. That personality trait was already there, and the video games generally act as a way of, just manifesting that which is already there, that which you already need to be dealing with.
Has to be said that there are certain elements inside adult video games that we need to be very careful of allowing into our lives. There are things like graphic violence, graphic nudity, graphic language, and horrific or gory situations that will always be abusive to our hearts and our minds. And
abusive to our heart? Seeing gore is abusive to your heart and mind? That seems kind of weird, especially when it's very obviously fictional gore. That seems kind of like, I don't know how to properly word that. The idea that seeing gore is somehow going to be a challenge to your Christian faith. Have you heard of Passion of the Christ? It's literally a torture porn film, but because the person being tortured is God, then I guess it's good.
The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 4, above all else, guard your heart, for it determines the course of your life. Next, I would say you need to be very careful because there are certain video games that are pointedly demonic and evil, and that's the purpose of the game. There are game series such as Resident Evil or Silent Hill that the—
Wait. One of these has demons, and one of these does not. Silent Hill has demons and ghosts and all kinds of spooky shit because it's a very psychological experience. The entire idea behind the paranormal activity in Silent Hill is that it is unexplained and there's no real way of knowing what's going on in Silent Hill, despite how many times you delve into the madness of that town. Resident Evil, on the other hand, deals with genetic experiments. For all intents and purposes, the average Resident Evil story is rooted in a kernel of reality. Always. Genetic experiments happen all the time right now, just not to the degree, at least not that I know of, that we see in Resident Evil. These are not demonic beings. They may look spoopy, They may look scary, and yeah, that's kind of the point. But again, these are not actual demons coming from hell. I remember being told that I was not allowed to play Resident Evil growing up because the game series was called Resident Evil, despite the fact that the original name of the series was Biohazard and not Resident Evil. Literally, the marketing team behind the game had more to do with me not being able to experience these games when I was significantly younger than the actual content of the games when I finally got around to playing them. But anyways, let's go ahead and hear the next argument of why these video games may potentially be risks to Christians.
The whole purpose is survival horror, and they want you to be in an environment of anxiety, fear, or horror, and that's the atmosphere that it brings into your home.
Wait, playing a horror video game where you are meant to experience anxiety during the game brings those emotions, manifests them into your home? I don't want to feel like I'm deliberately misunderstanding what you're saying. It sounds like you're taking the game design and arguing that that literally manifests everything that happens there in the home. Like literally, if I play Resident Evil, suddenly my house is going to be an anxiety-filled mess. That doesn't seem to line up with reality, because that tends to differ person to person.
It brings an oppressive feel into your house and into your mind because that was the purpose of the game setting. And so you need to be very careful about what you allow your mind and your heart to experience. Obviously, fear, anxiety, panic, these things are not from God. And
wait, fear, anxiety, and panic are not from God? My dude. My guy. My fellow human being. Was it not God who created everything? Does it not say in Isaiah that God created the evil things as well as the good? Is God not responsible for the literal synaptic firing in my brain that triggers a fear response? Like, all of that stuff comes from God, yes? If you say no, then I have to wonder if there's more than one creator deity. Also, yeah, no, Valkyrie, you're right. Are we told literally to fear God? Fear is an emotion that comes directly from God. He literally demands that we fear him. Moreover, I have a question. Fear and anxiety, they don't come from God. Let's go ahead and take that argument right now. What do you think was felt by every person who died in the global flood that God supposedly killed everyone in? How do you think everybody felt during their last 2.5 minutes of life? Do you think there was fear or anxiety there? Do you feel like there was maybe some other negative emotions that people were experiencing as a direct result of something that came from God? The flood came from God in your mythos. He is directly responsible for every iota of fear that was felt by every single person drowning and dying. And also the fear and anxiety of everybody who is in the middle of hell right now, if hell is a real place. All of that is from God then too, because, well, you're in hell, and hell is a place that God created. And he created you as a person with the capacity to feel fear, and then threw you into a lake of fire where you can only feel those negative emotions eternally, never ending. Speaking of fear, Blue Cat Shadow, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an... You fucking monster. Jesus Christ, you people with that. Anyways, point is, if God created everything, he created my ability to perceive fear. Which means that these are in fact emotions that come directly from God in the most reductive physical sense. Not to mention, God literally has created scenarios in the mythos of the Bible which have enacted shit tons of anxiety and fear in the various people interacting with him in those stories. You can say that these are things that don't come from God, but the reality is they do. Inconvenient truth as it might be.
And so if you are already somebody that battles with these things and you don't want your mind to be further polluted, you need to be very careful about guarding your soul and your mind from things that are specifically designed to put you in a state of fear or oppression.
So don't play Resident Evil or Silent Hill because they will pollute your mind. They will literally infect your mind with actual fucking brain poison that will apparently manifest fear and anxiety into your home. Carte blanche. Thank you very much for redeeming the hydrate, Vroid. I will go ahead and do that right now. So, yeah, no, this just sounds like nonsense. This sounds like somebody who wants to have a modicum of control over who gets to do what or who gets to enjoy what kind of entertainment. And his best argument is it might make you afraid. And that feels really, really weak to me.
Finally, I want to say this. Video games are created to be extremely addictive. The creators want you to spend plenty of time playing their game over and over. I can remember when I was younger, there was a game that I owned that after I looked at all the months and maybe a year that I'd played the game, I had logged hundreds of hours in one video game. And it can be a time thief from your life. And I would say this, for people that are always playing video games, there can come a time in your life where video games are elevated in your life above even your relationship with Jesus Christ.
So, okay, this is one that I heard all the time growing up, and I've got a fun counter for it. But I've heard the argument that, basically this is the worship argument, that by playing video games a lot, it's a form of worship, therefore you're worshiping the video games over and above your worship of God. And, well, I'm just going to say this right now, this only exists in evangelical circles. So if you look at the way that the Catholics, for instance, and mind, I'm an atheist, I'm not a Catholic, but I've had this discussion with Catholic fusionists once before, years ago. If you look at the way that the Catholics look at worship, they view worship as a tiered system. There's a type of worship that is reserved for God. There's a type, a different, entirely separate type of worship that is set aside for someone like, say, Mother Mary. And then there's another type of worship, completely separate again, that is tiered for, you know, say, the saints. This is one of the reasons why you get evangelicals and Catholics having wars with each other about worship. They go, aha, you worship, evangelicals will go, aha, you worship Mother Mary, and she's not a deity, and therefore you're committing blasphemy, or what have you. Various things that I heard when I was growing up. But to the Catholics, they're not committing any type of blasphemy because the type of worship is separate, much like how we have separate types of love for your family versus love for your friend versus love for your job versus love for your hobby. These are all different tiers and different types of love. Much the same, the Catholic view on worship is differently tiered as well. Because of that differently tiered system, you can start to understand why me, who was not Catholic but was evangelical, started to see that the worship argument was kind of nonsense. Because to me, the worship argument looks like you're trying to say that because I've spent more time playing video games, I am necessarily worshiping them, which is kind of bullshit. It's not necessarily what he's saying here, but it is the argument that I was given growing up for freaking years. So there's another problem here, though. Aside from the tiered worship system, aside from any of that, my other issue with this line of thinking is that there's a quiet part that's not being said, which is you might log hundreds of hours into video games, but they would rather you read hundreds of hours into one book, which, in my estimation, from the outside looking in, seems to be as much of a waste of time if we're going to go ahead and say that the 100 of hours in a video game is a waste of time. To me, these are categorically both media consumption, so they're both going to be wastes of time for me. If we're viewing one as a waste, we're going to have to view them both as a waste. Now, I wouldn't say that somebody studying the Bible for hundreds of hours is a waste of time, because, again, viewing it as media consumption, I play stuff like League of Legends, World of Warcraft, Pokemon, games that you sink hundreds of hours in. Hell, the Chow Garden in Sonic Adventure 2, I have sunk hundreds of hours into. But I don't regret any of that time, because I've either met wonderful people through those various games, or I've had experiences that I will never be able to replicate going forward. The first time that I managed to hatch an invisible Chow and started showing it off to people in my school in Sonic Adventure 2, that's an experience I'm never going to be able to replicate, and it's not an experience I would have been able to pull from your Bible. Being able to make friends discussing the lore of the Resident Evil series is something that I won't be able to replicate, especially not by using your Bible. Being able to sit down in a game of League of Legends and find a group of friends to just piss away our time after work and just enjoy myself instead of thinking about the next day where I have to go in and deal with a manager. That is a type of experience that I would not be getting from your Bible. And before you answer, before you try to hit me with the, but there's church, I've been to several churches. Believe me, my want to go to church, even as a Christian, did not outweigh my want to spend time with my friends, as opposed to just hearing somebody teach me about a book that I was going to be reading when I went home anyway.
And if you have anything in your life that takes its place before God, then it has become a god in your life. And that is a sin. God
okay, so he actually is going to use the worship argument. Anything... So I'm just going to say this right now. If literally anything can become a god randomly, then your god is necessarily weak as shit, because the category of god is so fucking flimsy that I'm just going to ignore it and say, hey, Trevor, thank you very much for gifting a sub to Vorkoid. Alpha Mario X has dropped in 10 bits. Someone published a King James Bible onto a Game Boy cartridge with a few minigames on it. I think you might have seen it on Angry Video Game Nerd. I actually did not see that episode of Angry Video Game Nerd. Huh.
Declared, I will have no other gods before me. So in conclusion, there's nothing about video games in general that is wrong, but as with TV shows or movies or websites, social media, or anything else, there is an element that is evil that we should guard ourselves against.
So instead of mentioning stuff like, say, pornographic video games, you just have to kind of vaguely go, hey, sometimes horror games exist, and those are bad for Christians because they induce fear. And apparently experiencing fear must be some kind of sin then. You know, that's bullshit. Also, you do know that when God was saying there will be no other gods before me in Exodus, if memory serves, he's talking about the moment where the Israelites were worshiping the golden calf, where they had literally constructed an idol of a god to worship instead of God, which is very, very different to just spending more time doing something. Like, I don't hook up my Nintendo Switch and bow down to it, and put on, like, an anime waifu screensaver on my computer and start worshipping it as if it's a god. Now, I'm sure there's probably somebody who does do that, but it's not me, strangely enough. I don't think just spending enough time with something is suddenly a god, because if that's the case, spending a lot of time with your children can become a god. Spending a lot of time with your loved ones can become a god. If you're doing more of that, then rereading the same one book over and over and over and over and over again. It's kind of nonsense.
No matter what you're doing, always make sure you are guarding your life, guarding your soul, guarding your heart, and cultivating a relationship with Jesus Christ. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching again today.
And no more plugs for you. DDLG Playground or Artesian builds. Both of the links are in the description there. Use those instead of his nonsense. So, I gotta say, the idea of guard your heart, guard your heart, guard your heart, I have a skeptic version of this that maybe we can use instead. How about fact check, fact check, fact check? When somebody tells you something that sounds really weird and you don't know if it's true or not, fact check it. Instead of guarding your heart from new information, be open to new information and just be diligent with fact-checking your sources when you get that information. Maybe that would be a better thing to do. I think that's a much better creed to live by than guard your heart, guard your heart, guard your heart. Just saying. But with that said, as always, everyone, if you want to support the channel and what I do, there are links in the description you can use to do so. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.